Good morning and welcome back to Books and Gratitude. Today I'm talking about The Innocents, Part 1 of the Innocents Mystery Series by C.A. Asbrey. And I'm giving this a 5-star review. And it's because this was such an entertaining read for me. That's why it's getting a 5-star review. It had so many elements I love in a story. Mystery, danger, chemistry, historical detail, and characters who kept me curious from beginning to end. And what immediately caught my attention about this book is the setup. We have Pinkerton detective Abigail McKay. She's a master of disguises and new crime-solving technology, and she's chasing two outlaw ringleaders, Nat Quinn and Jake Conroy. And they specialize in robbing trains that are carrying payrolls. And right away, that gives this story such a strong sense of movement and tension. It feels vivid, it feels exciting, and it's full of possibilities. Now, I'm not usually a fan of historical novels in any genre, but I love that this one was set in 1868. It gives the story such a fascinating backdrop. You get the danger and grit of the Old West, but you also get this really interesting layer of emerging science and investigative methods. That's new information for back then. That detail made the story feel fresh to me. It's not just outlaws on the run and a detective on their tail. It's also a story about intelligence, innovation, and the ways both sides are using new methods to stay ahead of each other. And that adds a lot of depth and makes the cat and mouse dynamic even more compelling story. And also, one of the biggest strengths here is the chapter setup. Abigail isn't a passive heroine. She sounds sharp, she's capable, she's determined, and more than able to hold her own in a dangerous world. I always appreciate a female lead who brings both intelligence and strength to a page. And Abby feels like exactly that kind of character. She isn't just reacting to events, she's actively shaping them and chasing answers and stepping into danger with purpose. And then we have Nat Quinn and Jake Conroy. They're the ringleaders of the Innocents. I think what makes this premise so appealing is that they're not painted as flat villains. There's charisma there. There's complexity. And the fact that these men who Abigail has every intention of bringing to justice ends up saving her life, and it changes everything. That is such a strong turning point in the story because it instantly complicates the lines between hunter and hunted, criminal and ally, duty and emotion. And I love stories that play with that kind of tension. And once Abigail agrees to help Nat and Jake bring in the murderer of a family friend, the novel really opens into something richer than a straightforward pursuit story. All of a sudden, everyone has a reason to work together, even though they all know this alliance has an expiration date. That creates such a wonderful undercurrent of suspense because the reader is constantly aware that this partnership can't last forever in its current form. The closer they get to the truth, the closer Abigail gets to having to decide whether she'll do what she has always done by turning in Nat and Jake over to the law. That emotional conflict is one of the most interesting parts of the premise for me. Because, of course, there's also attraction, and that adds another layer. Abigail finds herself falling for Nat. And I think that question at the center of it is such a good one. Is it attraction real, or is he using her to learn more about Pinkerton methods? That uncertainty makes the relationship more engaging because it keeps the emotional stakes high right along the mystery and danger. It's not just about solving a murder. It's also about trust, deception, loyalty, and whether any connection can be real when both people have reasons to hold something back. And that's exactly the kind of tension I enjoy in a book like this. I also really like the phrase best enemies in describing Abby and Nat because it perfectly captures the energy this story seems to have. There's a conflict, but there's also respect. There's danger, but there's also attraction. And there's this push and pull that makes a relationship dynamic feel alive, like really. And when a story can combine romantic tension with mystery and action, it really becomes very easy to get invested in the story and the people in the story. And another thing I appreciated is the layered plot. This isn't just one case or one crime. The web of criminal activity grows more entangled as the story unfolds, and that gives this book a satisfying sense of complexity. I really like mysteries that don't feel so simple, where every answer seems to open the door to another question. That kind of structure keeps the momentum going and makes the world of the book feel bigger. And honestly, I think that's one reason this sounds like such a strong series opener. A first book in a mystery series has to do a lot, like a lot. It also has to tell a satisfying story and introduce memorable characters. It has to create tension and leave readers wanting more. From the premise, it feels like The Innocents does just that. It introduces a compelling heroine. I love Abigail. It gives us outlaw characters with charm and dimension and sets up an intriguing emotional conflict. And it also builds a mystery that pulls all of those elements together. And to be honest, I didn't hate Nat or Jake. Most villains you want to hate them, but these two you just can't. I also want to talk about the historical setting a little bit more, because I think that's part of what makes this book stand out. Historical mysteries can be so rewarding when they make the setting feel more than just decoration. And this one really seems to do that beautifully. The Pinkerton angle, the train robberies, the early investigation techniques, the outlaw culture itself, all of it feels woven into a story in a way that really matters. And it gives the book atmosphere, like real historic atmosphere. But it also shapes the characters and the conflicts. And that matters so much in a book like this because it helps the world feel lived in. It helps it feel real. And beyond all of that, this just sounds like a genuinely fun read. It really was a fun read. It took me no time, like a week, to read this book, and I'm glad that I did. This book has danger, mystery, romance, moral tension, and a heroine who may have finally met someone capable of challenging her in every single way possible. Those are all the things I love to find in a story. And when a book can give me suspense and emotional tension at the same time, it really is already doing a lot. Right. And for me, this is a 5-star read because it offers such a satisfying blend of mystery and character-driven tension. I love the idea of Abigail McKay having to work alongside the very men she has been chasing. I love that the story asked not just who can be trusted, but what justice looks like when feelings start complicating the mission. And I love that this all unfolds in a rich historical setting that makes the story feel even more textured and compelling. So if you enjoy historical mysteries, outlaw stories, strong heroines, slow burn tension, and that irresistible pull between enemies and allies, this absolutely sounds like a book worth picking up. Truly, I recommend it. That's why I gave it 5 stars. And because this is Books and Gratitude, I want to end with a few words of gratitude. Today, I'm grateful for the stories that give us complicated characters instead of easy answers. I'm grateful for books that combine mystery and emotion so well that we're invested not just in the outcome, but in the people chasing it. I'm grateful for strong heroines like Abigail McKay, who remind us that intelligence, courage, and determination are always compelling. And I'm grateful for historical fiction that brings the past to life in so many ways that it feels vivid, suspenseful, and full of heart and real. And I'm also grateful for stories that remind us people are rarely only one thing. A detective can be vulnerable. An outlaw can be charismatic. An enemy can become an ally. And sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that live right in that complicated space. And finally, I'm grateful for books that keep us turning the pages, that pull us into another time and place, and that remind us how much joy there is in getting lost in a really good book. That kind of joy is always worth celebrating. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Books and Gratitude. If so, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please share this with someone you think will also enjoy this story. Thank you and have a great Sunday. Bye.